Hello, Michael228p here. Today I'm going to show you some tips to make your indoor maps better. I know the Lear has made a similar video on this. However, I want to do my own version. So today I'm going to show you some tips about making indoor maps look more better. In my opinion, make a good indoor map is way more complex than making outdoor maps. First, you need to choose your theme for your map. Like here, you can't see the theme obviously because it's just a gray box. First, you have to go to the Google Photos and search for a theme, like factory. Today I will be using this theme to make my indoor map look more better. Go to the Google Photos and search for some images. Like here, I found a pretty nice picture for today's video. So, we know that we are going to build a factory. Let's go back to the Roblox studio. First, we are going to adjust the size and the shape of this room. Now, it is just a gray box and it looks very ugly. We have to change the size and the shape of this room in order to make it look more beautiful in general. You can change it to many shapes like H, L or P, but the most common one is L-shaped. Try to make it L-shaped and you find that it will be very beautiful. Look, it's very beautiful, isn't it? Now, let's look at this photo again. Remember that there are poles at the two sides of the wall. And this one. The roof is very beautiful. Now, let's try to replicate those in Studio. The third tip is to try to use different textures or materials if you want to say that. You would not want to use the same material over and over again. Because if you use the same material, if you use the only one material, it will be too boring for the audience to place your map. Try to use different materials to make the map more interesting. Like this room, I will use neon, metal, and diamond plate. There are 3 materials already. Last time, I have said that try to replicate the pictures in Studio as much as possible. The fourth tip is to use as much wedges as possible. Yet, it's quite similar to the last episode, where you have to build wedges in order to make a good outdoor map. If you look at the pictures closely, you can find some spots that you can use wedges to make it look more beautiful, such as the roof. The roof is not flat, but there is a little bit of angle. And also the supports of the two sides of the room. Now, a question might have come up to your mind. How am I gonna make my map look better? How am I gonna replicate those pictures better? Well, try not to be afraid when replicating those things. You really have to be brave, otherwise you'll be afraid to do anything and you can't do anything and the map will be just worst. Try to use the skills that you have learned, try to use wedges, try to rotate some little parts and just try to replicate it. Yet that's it. You do not have to be afraid when putting down these details. You can try to experiment with something. You might have learned something new during experiments. So here is a time lapse of me trying to complete the roof. Now, let's try to replicate those poles at the two sides of the walls as much as possible. If you looked closely, the poles are actually not directly under the roof. So, when making the poles, you have to move the wall out of a bit so that the poles can fit in those spaces. Besides just replicating, you can also use your imagination to make the poles or everything looks more amazing. Because you can build what you want in Roblox Studio, but not just replicating others' work. Next, let's try to create the windows in the room. If you take a look at the picture, the corners of the window are actually 90 degrees. However, I want to be a little bit of creative. So, I make the windows corners 45 degrees instead of 90 degrees. That way, we can make the angles of the windows more smooth. And the more smooth the corners, the more beautiful it is. Before start making windows, you can always try to calculate a bit so the windows can be evenly placed across the window's frame. If you have difficulties in aligning the parts, try to use the transform tool. It helps you to align parts very easily. I do not want to teach here, you can try to experiment with it. There are some buttons you can press on and you will know what it actually does. After you have finished one window, you can try to copy this to the other parts of the room, so that you won't have to waste any time doing these things. Now, let's make stuffs that are actually exist in factories. First, I kinda want to improve the roof a little bit more so that it just fits the factory style. Because usually, roofs of factories have a lot of supports and that can be replicated by truss in Roblox. So that is a good idea to put more truss on the roof. Also, I would like to add some details on the roof so that the roof will not look so empty or bland. Now, let's add some interior design to the factory room. First, you can add some elevations to the floor. So, there will be more elevations in the room and the room will look less boring. Since factory rooms usually have different elevations of floors because people at different floors will work on different things. Besides different elevations, you can add conveyor belts because it is a common thing that can be seen in a factory. You can add a lot of more supports under the conveyor belt because in factory, things are usually supported by a lot of theme posts. So if you add a lot of them, it looks like more is a factory. Now let's add a platform so that workers can actually work with the conveyor belt. Sometimes when you're adding the details, you will have some ideas for the gameplay, so feel free to change the gameplay too, because it can really improve your map. Yeah. The last tip, of course, is lighting. This time, I want to add a cold fill to the factory. If we take a look at the color wheel, if we want to create a cold fill, we should use green or blue colors. Now adjust the lighting settings until the ambience fits the map. Now, we will be adding the final details to the map. So after you have finished the lighting settings, you can add some details like boxes, because boxes is a common thing to be seen in a factory. So add a few of them and it will be quite better. And also you can change the color or materials so that it won't be that boring. Also you can put some of them on the conveyor belt so that the conveyor belt looks like it's not working anymore, so that the boxes had just stuck on the conveyor belt. Finally, you can add some textures to the floor, like here. It's a pretty simple stuff, so I did not talk much about this. Yeah, that's basically the tutorial of this. The tutorial should end here, but if you want me continue to improve this map, you can continue to watch the video.